Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Mr. Salazar. Mr. Salazar currently works at NASA as an engineer. He served as a subsystem manager for the Space Shuttle Modular Auxiliary Data System and was involved with the development of the space station internal audio system, as well as the development of the command and data handling flight computers and the command and telemetry computers for the spacecraft version of the X-38 spacecraft crew return vehicle. He also was a systems engineer for the hardware development of the Space Shuttle cockpit avionics upgrade to provide more insight into the health and status of the Space Shuttle. Additionally, he has a passion for sharing knowledge with students, reaching out to well over 60,000 students through speaking engagements, tutoring, and mentoring. He received his Bachelors of Science in Engineering from Southern Methodist University. I am so excited to be able to talk with such an inspirational individual. Welcome, Mr. Salazar. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to do this interview.
Good morning. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, before we kind of get into understanding your journey of how you really got into the space industry, I'd like to know more about your typical day. What do you currently do?
Okay, so I'm currently the Human Computer Interface Technical Discipline Lead, which basically I'm the lead person at the Johnson Space Center for Human Computers Interface. So anything that the astronaut touches, whether it's a video camera, a command and control display, lighting systems, to maintain circadian rhythms, anything that's related to the human and the human crew member touches, that's my responsibility. As part of that, I am also doing some advanced development work, which I get university students involved, which is a part I enjoy. And then also my main job is working with the commercial crew program, which encompasses currently SpaceX as well as the Boeing CST-100, which are commercial vehicles that NASA has for sending astronauts to the space station.
Wow, that's really cool. And I'm sure through these experiences and through your career, you probably had very exciting projects or research that you might have worked on. So what is your most exciting project?
I have to say the most exciting one was the one related to controlling the closed circuit television cameras on the space shuttle by voice, and it was called the voice command system. And so what I liked about that was actually it's multifold. Why I like that. One was that I got to for the first time ever in my early career, I got to work with astronauts. And so because the astronauts were going to command and control the closed circuit television camera by voice, and so I was working with astronauts. And then secondly, I got to learn a lot more about what it takes to design systems for the space environment. The space environment is not benign by all means. It's very harsh, very unforgiving, especially the space radiation environment. So I got to learn more about designing systems for the space environment. And then thirdly, I got to learn about systems engineering. And that's one of the motivations, I guess, or one of the reasons I got into systems engineering because of that project. So it actually led for me to getting my master's in systems engineering.
Yeah, that actually brings up another question is I know like there's been a lot of research going on how astronauts affected by space radiation. By chance, did you have, did you get into that side of how astronauts could be affected by space environment? Or was it mostly
Well,
focused on the mechanics?
it was actually most of my work has been more so associated, especially like in the voice command system, was looking at how space affected the voice of an astronaut in space, and for the most part, there's space radiation basically affects the astronaut in terms of space getting high doses, which can cause cancer. But my concern was more so with the changes in the voice. One of the reasons, there's several reasons or several things that happen to the speech process when you're in the microgravity environment. One of them is that there's no sinus drain, and if you ever notice pictures about some of the astronauts that have been up there a while, their face looks real puffy, and that's because there's no sinus drain because of the lack of the microgravity environment. The other thing is because of the lack of a microgravity environment, the body grows. They call it muscular atrophy, And so the body grows and there's a change in the vocal tract to some extent. And then the third thing is just simply because astronauts work long hours in space, they're tired and fatigued, which which also affects the speech process. But the radiation for most of my projects have been associated with the hardware, not with the human. That's something that's of a major challenge for future space missions, especially when we go to Mars.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited about that. I'm really, I geek out when it comes to space biology or astrobiology. So I know that's an area that I'm very interested in researching. And so that brings up another question, which is, I first of all didn't know that Astronaut Voices actually changed in space. Is it for short-term voyages or only long-term voyages?
I mean, it depends how long they're up there, but in long duration, eventually the voice kind of levels off. And basically, what happens is not. I mean, to the human ear, it's not so noticeable per se. Um, the vocal they call it fundamental frequencies of the vocal tract, kind of like resonant frequencies, if you will, change and pretty much stay stable. But yeah, over time you get used to hearing the person sound like they're stuffed, like a stuffy nose type voice, and
Oh,
that stays with them until they come back to Earth. Because of the lack of the gravity, this pulling down on sinuses and everything that you have there. So
yeah.
yeah,
So you can undo that when you come back on Earth. Does it become normal again?
yeah, it becomes normal again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. So I'm really curious of how did your journey lead you to work at NASA? Like, did you always have like ever since you're a little kid, you're like, oh, I'm gonna work at NASA, or was there kind of like a twist and turn in your journey?
Twists and turns. Growing up, I grew up in the ghettos of Corpus Christi, and my dad had a fourth grade education. My mom had a second grade education. In fact, she was an orphan, and so education wasn't a big thing in my family. It was more of a work ethic, work ethic, and so. I never dreamed that I would ever become, working at NASA. I have to say that I had a love for science. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed learning, doing things by hand. I love building things. But I over the when I got through middle school and high school, I just didn't know what I was going to do. My high school uh, advisor had told me to consider being an auto mechanic. So it wasn't until later in life that after working some hard jobs, that I wanted to go back to school. And I had to be honest with you that I didn't think I was ever going to go to work at NASA. I have to say that I had to take one step at a time in order to, first of all, to get back to junior college. I had to get accepted on a probation basis. And once I excelled there, I graduated with a 2-year degree in electronics technology. And at that point, I have to say my advisor at that junior college was very instrumental in helping me actually become where I am today, or where I am today, because he told me to take the hard classes, if you will, for electronics technology instead of the easier ones. And so I did. And as a result, when I transferred over to University of Houston, I actually was started out in technology, but wasn't happy. And then I switched over to engineering. And I at one time tried to apply at NASA as an intern, and my GPA was low. So I didn't get that, but I did get another internship at a seismic exploration company. And that, along with being an electronics technician, repair part-time for a company called Canon Calculators, that coupled with my university degree in engineering actually got me into NASA. But I must be honest with you, I was uh, I was contemplating whether I was going to work there or work at a couple of other places that were offering me twice the salary that NASA was offering me. So, but in the end, I came to work at NASA because of the work as well as stability, job stability.
Yeah, I think your journey is so unique. I think, it's something that I wrote in like Ignited Thinkers mission statement. A part of it is you don't have to come, your economic status or your background or your parents' education really does not have anything to do with your life or how you can succeed. And I think you're a perfect example that, if just because you're in a tough situation right now, there's always a way to get out of it and really reach your dreams. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Sure.
And so in the introduction, I mentioned how you reached over 16,000 students through your engagement and your outreach. And so I'm really curious, how were you able to reach out to such a large audience? And like, what was your motivation behind doing all of these talks?
Oh my goodness. I have to tell you uh, that a lot of this happened. I'm reminded of a song by John Lennon that wrote many years ago called Beautiful Boy. And in it, there's a line that says, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." And so I first started doing outreach activities at the university, and I kind of enjoyed it. So when I came to work at NASA, actually there were two programs that were associated with outreach activities. One was called the Speakers Bureau, and the other one was basically called the Education Outreach Program. And so I signed up for those, and because I thought it was going to be interesting, and I started to work with the Speakers Bureau in getting me speaking opportunities with at that time primarily elementary school kids, and then I joined an organization that took on major NASA activities. Like, for example, we have one here in Houston called the Houston Hispanic Forum that somewhere in the vicinity of 17 to 20,000 students come to listen about different careers in different areas. And NASA had a booth, and we also had speakers, and I got involved with that. And then I started to get I started to get invitations to speak at universities. I spoke with the math counts at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. That was the biggest gig that I ever did. I was over 650 students at that one. And so over the years, it started just to avalanche, if you will. Now I'm doing outreach activities, not just the United States, but also I've done India, I've done Australia, I've done England. I'm going to be doing Scotland next month. In fact, I'm doing Puerto Rico. I done South America, Mexico. So I've kind of
Wow,
been somewhat all over the map.
that's
But
amazing.
again, I never anticipated this. It's just what happens when you're on a path to doing other things. So, but I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to do this and really show. I feel like one of the biggest things why, or, a lot of students or a lot of kids when they're young, they always get excited about space. I think humans innately are very curious. I think, space excites them because it's something that is very unknown still to us, even though, we do so many things up there. So I think, slowly, though, throughout middle school and high school, students slowly feel like they're not good enough for a space. They can't get a career, mainly because of lack of knowledge. I feel like
Sure.
if I haven't met my tech ed teacher, my parents are not in the space industry, so I would have never have been involved in that. I would have been like, oh, it's like for probably people as smart as Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
It's not for me. And I feel like that's exactly the reason why I'm doing these interviews is really to, meet people like you and other students and show them that, you don't have to be like Albert Einstein, and there's so many diverse career options. And I'm so glad you're doing this and reaching out to like thousands of students across the world and really showing them that space, is diverse.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, you came from a very difficult background and you were able to achieve so much. So, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today? Or, of course, like you were mentioning, was this more of like a difficult path for you?
It was again. It was a difficult path. I never imagined myself coming to work at NASA. Honestly, I at one time I thought I was just happy to graduate with my 2-year degree and thought I was going to end up being an electronics technician, and happy with that. But it just seems like perhaps humans are biologically wired to wanting to grow. And I have to say that once I accomplished that, I wanted to grow in terms of knowledge. There's people out there that sometimes want to grow in terms of financial wealth. And my philosophy is that, because I came from a kind of a poor background, that, I felt that I was financially set, so to speak. And so it wasn't finance that I was after. I was looking for knowledge. I was looking for understanding new things. And so I, I, I have to say that coming to work at NASA, even though it happened, serendipitously, I have to say that I'm glad it happened in that fashion. That the path that I ended up in led me to NASA.
Yeah, I could really see your passion when you're talking about it. I think like there's these days because of like society and the way things are, I feel like a lot of students are pressured to pick certain careers to, have a better financial status. But I think it really shows if you follow your passion, everything just works out perfectly fine. So thank you. And were there any specific obstacles, apart from just like your education, you weren't like raised to, be like get super good grades and like get into really good schools or whatever. Like, did you have any like actual obstacles in your, in your path that stopped you from, or like was like a hurdle you had to jump over really to get to where you are today?
I have to say that the primary hurdles were taking some of let's call them the more hard classes. In
Hmm.
electronics technology, you could take technical, 1 semester of technical math, 1 semester of what they call technical physics, and something called English for the technician or something to that effect. But the counselor said, George, you need to basically uh, upgrade yourself to, you can do better than this. And so he recommended me take out college algebra. But before I could take college algebra, I had to take intermediate algebra. I had to take a couple of remedial classes in English, and I took the regular physics class. So I had to take it again at the university, just simply because it's taught differently at the university. And so those early challenges in the education were my biggest obstacles at that point. When I transferred over to the University of Houston for my bachelor's in electrical engineering, I had to hang on tight, to weather the storm. Doing calculus, all the different calculus and the engineering classes were very challenging. And at first, I found myself competing with other students, and because my grades, some of the tests coming back were not all that fantastic compared to some of the students. And then I realized that one of my obstacles was one that I put on myself, was that I was trying to compete with other students, and I said, this is not right. Let me just forget about them and let me just focus on myself, concentrate on myself, and I'm going to do the best that I can. And that kind of let's call it, relieved me of a lot of burden, a lot of stress that I had, just trying to stay up with other students. Because every student, I mean, there's there's smart students, and there's some students that are fair, and there's some that are not so fair. And you're going to fall in one of those categories. And depending on what that category is, you have to calibrate yourself to see what you have to do. I know that when I was taking all my engineering classes, I was working twice as hard as some of my fellow student colleagues. uh, so some came easy to them, and it just didn't come easy to me. So I had to study twice as hard in order to make a decent grade. The whole challenges of education was a big, and of course, I also had a family. My last semester at the university, and that was a challenge in itself. But I was determined to graduate, and nothing was going to stop me, because I've gone this far, and I said, no, I got to keep going. I got to keep going. So determination, perseverance, and that's something that was instilled in me by my family. Like I said, my family had a very strong work ethic. Working at the donut shop, where my dad taught me how to make donuts and all that. Uh, when he had a heart attack, I had to take over the business, and so I had to learn about responsibility of a family. I had to learn about time management, and so all those things were instilled in me that I think culminated in helping me and pushing me forward to getting my education and eventually coming to work at NASA. But I do have to say that coming to work at NASA wasn't not so much my GPA, but actually the GPA plus the work that I did as an electronics repair technician, as well as working as an intern in a seismic exploration company called Geosource at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, first I would like to say I think family is like really important. I think they always like make you grow with certain values that carry on and make you who you are. So I'm really glad that your family was able to provide you with that support and those values of hard work. I know, my parents are always like working even at a store or, tutoring students really teaches you a lot more than just being a student in school. You have to be able to actually be out there, work with others, and actually be in the real world to understand, the importance of hard work and the importance of different situations. I feel like sometimes we're in our own bubble as students, and I think having those opportunities to whether do internships or work in other places to get that larger perspective of various issues and different lives. So I'm glad that you were able to get that opportunity.
Mm.
And second, I definitely agree that in the whole scale, it's not just GPA or grades, and your the way you are as a person, the opportunities you seek after, everything really counts. I guess when it comes to a job or even colleges or anything, it's like the whole personality, the whole box, not just a number. I think it's really important to remember. And as a student. As a high school student, sometimes I feel like we stress ourselves by looking at our peers, like, oh my gosh, they have like a 4.5 GPA. Now I have to get a 4.6 GPA, or I
Yeah.
have to have like at least an equal And so there's like this constant stress where it's not even like a friendly academic environment. It's more like you're competing with others in school instead of learning. And it's like it's developed in this weird way. And I feel like that was probably there back then too. So I think always like realigning of what you're here for and how you're here to learn and grow is something that I should always remember, and everyone who's listening should always remember. So, what was key to becoming knowledgeable about the industry you decided to pursue? I know you mentioned there was an internship. Was that like, was that the best way that helped you achieve your dreams, or was there another mentorship that you had?
Well, I have to say that the internship I had at Geosource uh, taught me about let's call it the engineering way of thinking, and I think that's one of the things that drew the attention of the interviewer recruiter that I interviewed with when NASA came to University of Houston to interview students. I was competing with students with had a higher GPA than I did, and so it goes back to what you mentioned about the whole I call it the holistic experience. It's just not education, but it's what you're doing. Even volunteer work. And so the interviewer told me that despite not having high GPA, but I had work experience, especially in engineering, that taught me the engineering way of thinking. And that's what NASA looked for. In fact, he shared with me that one of the reasons we were successful in the Apollo space program and landing on the moon was that a lot of the engineers, even the ones that were being hired out of school, had work experience. And so they understood what it took to build systems and understood the system thinking, and which made the, let's say, the learning curve much shorter. And because we were at that time at the Apollo space program was on a 10-year cycle that we had to reach the moon by the end of the decade in 1970. And so the people's experience helped accelerate that. So yeah, the mentorships was great. I have to say that again, many times it's just not one thing that leads you to a certain path, but multiple things, and that's what happened to me. The recommendation by the junior college, to take the tough classes was obviously instrumental in where I am right now. Getting rejected by NASA initially as an internship was also a motivator for me because I said I'm going to try harder. And of course, because I got rejected there, I didn't stop. I kept looking for an internship, and I got one at Geosource, which ultimately, between that and electronics repair technician, led me to coming to work at NASA.
Yeah, it's crazy when you like look back, I guess, how everything really worked out. And the fact that you didn't give up, I feel like sometimes when we face a failure, we're like, okay, they rejected me, so I cannot even work at
Yeah.
NASA, but you kept going after it and you didn't give up. You saw other internships. And I think that hard work and just like staying focused is something we should all remember. So more coming out of your story, obviously you've had a very inspirational story. I think listening to it was amazing, but I'd love to also hear your insights on what you think about the space industry. So obviously, we look at Twitter or we look at social media, and there's every day new news about space or new missions or new discoveries, and I feel like that's always exciting. So how do you keep up as a working engineer? You have a job, you have a family. So how do you keep up with all the news?
Well, I subscribe to various engineering and science uh, websites, and so every time, like for example, in the electronics industry, I subscribe to Texas Instruments as well as Electronics Design and other uh, companies that send out free webinars and free information about what's going on in the electronics industry. But I also do search. I do a lot of search about things that I heard a gentleman talk about machine learning. Let me go find out what that's about. And so it's a combination of subscribing to as much as possible. I subscribe to 13 different magazines, and then I subscribe to about 4 different kind of webinars, as well as I take classes at NASA. I love to learn, and so and the only way to keep up with everything that's going on, especially in the space industry, you have to be a constant learner. It's there's no way otherwise you'll find yourself obsolete very quickly. But I can tell you that all the colleagues that I've worked with at NASA, my colleagues and people at NASA in general, love learning. I mean, there's some gentlemen that there's one, in fact, that he's got 64 years with NASA, and he's still working. But he loves learning. He loves working, and I tell you that learning and just absorbing new information is what keeps your brain active and keeps it sharp for a long period of time. I think so, but we'll find out. Interview me in 30 years.
Yes, definitely. I think knowledge is key. My parents, they both come from like a very academic background. So they always like, ever since I was a little kid, they were like, learning education is the one thing where it's like you control and you can do whatever you want with it. And you can like better society as well as like, grow yourself. So I think learning was always something that everyone should do forever, whether it be in space knowledge or learning how to do different types of art or get into marketing. I feel like there's so many ways to learn. You're not just limited, so I think we should embrace that. And so I'm curious, what excites you about the future of space? Just because you're reading all these magazines, I'm sure there's some things that really excite you, but then other things that make you really nervous. So what are they?
As far as the excitement is concerned, I have to say that one day NASA is going to basically get to the point where we'll approach Star Trek one day. What you see on Star Trek and all these sci-fi shows will become a reality in terms of space travel. There's so many challenges, understandably, for getting to the Star Trek, but slowly but surely we'll get there. And that's the excitement, is that I'm part of, and I'm glad to be part of the early pioneering evolution, if you will, of space exploration. We still have a long way to go, but that's the excitement part, is that we are pioneering early on the space exploration that one day it's going to become old hat, just like let's going from the covered wagon and horses to transportation to
Yeah.
jet airliners now. So it's a far cry in terms of how far we've gone in terms of transportation here on Earth, and I see that happening in space exploration. So that part excites me. The part that's a little nerve wracking and has always been since I've been with NASA is let's call it the funding stability of NASA, because we're in a 1-year cycle. So every year our funding can change, and so it can alter our plans. And of course, with new administrations coming in and out and in and out, it tends to change the direction of NASA in some respects. And so that part is the difficult one to deal with. It's very frustrating, but we do what we can.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said about the excitement. Space travel, commercial space flight, really excites me. Like the fact that maybe in the future going on an airplane once was like a pretty big deal. Now it's like it's a big deal, but it's not as bad. I feel like in the future going into space, and
Yeah.
having that same feeling would be amazing. And the number of jobs, the number of careers that could come out of that, the number of research opportunities and research that is conducted in space can help advance the medical industry here on Earth. I feel like there's not even the medical industry, even technology. I feel like there's so many advancements that came from space technology that really helped us here
Hmm.
on Earth. So just imagining how much we can get out of the future of space really excites me, and I'm sure everyone else in the space
Yeah.
industry. And definitely about the budget, I feel like that's always a concern because you guys have so many projects going on. So hopefully, as long as we have all these continuous excitement about space, we shouldn't have a problem. So to kind of wrap up the interview, my question for you is, what advice do you have for young people regarding their pursuit of a passion in the STEM field or the space industry? Something that you wish you knew when you were, younger, maybe in middle school or high school or even college.
Wow, that's a good one. I have to say that despite your economic background or the education level of your family, whatever, that don't let that stop you from pursuing your dreams. And that's something that I think early on I just didn't see myself in terms of pursuing science and engineering and all that, because I saw my family was basically blue collar workers, and so no, I was the first to graduate from high school, so that was a biggie, and I thought just accomplishing that was enough. But as I mentioned previously, is that I wanted to grow. So you know it. I have to say two things that to students is don't let your background um, stop you from reaching your goals, but let that background be the influence for reaching your goals. And then secondly, never stop trying. I have to say that my definition of failure is when you stop trying. You can call you can call something a setback, but until you stop trying, you have not failed. And that's one of the big takeaways I have to say for my life and my career, is that I never stopped trying, and so I never was a failure per se. Um, Very few fail. If you want to pursue your dreams, just keep on plugging away. Perseverance is one of the key.
Yeah, I really that reminded me. So when I was in eighth grade this summer, when I started IgnitedThinkers, I went to this home in India where there was like around 70 kids of various backgrounds. All their parents came from a low economic status, or they didn't even have parents. So they lived at this Shirley's home. And I went there thinking that they, probably didn't have STEM career choices or didn't know what they wanted to do. So I was prepared to, inform them of all these options they have. So when I went there and asked them, what do you guys want to be when they grow up? I was really surprised. A lot of them were like, I want to go into the STEM field. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer. I want to
Wow.
go work for the army. I want to be like an army surgeon. And everyone had such big aspirations regardless of their background. And seeing like such highly motivated individuals regardless of the background really makes me inspired. I think all of us, including yourself, you're so inspirational to all of us that regardless of whatever background, because whether it be because you're an immigrant or because of your financial status or your ethnicity or however may, because of your gender identification,
Hmm.
nothing should ever stop you from achieving your goals. And I think, Mr. Salazar provided a perfect example that, as long as you have the drive and you like what you're doing, your background does not matter. And it should actually influence you and motivate you even more to be the first or to be the second or to really make a
Hmm.
difference and uplift everyone around you. So thank you so much for being an inspiration to all of us and sharing your journey and your research with us, Mr. Salazar. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, I
Thank
had an
you.
amazing conversation.